You're recording. So hi James, my name is McLaren and I'm here interviewing you with the Remembering Benzie Oral History Project, and this will all be uploaded to the Veterans History Project. So yeah, I've grown up here in Benzie County, Michigan, went to Benzie Central High School right down the street, and that's just a little bit about me. So what's your name?
James Priest. I actually born, raised in Benzie County, graduated from Benzie Central High School. Actually live less than a half mile from here.
What did you do for a living?
You want like a backlog of everything? Because
Sure.
I've gone from pruning pine trees, picking apples, to working in fruit plants, to oh goodness, working in the automotive industry up in Traverse City for a while, and then finished up odd jobs here and there, but also worked out to Jillison's Variety Fabrication as a welder.
Awesome. So, we're going to kind of get into the
All right.
deeper questions now. In your biological data form, you said that you were born in Frankfurt, and is that, but you grew up here in Benzie?
Yeah, I was born over to Paul Oliver Hospital.
Oh, sure. So, did your experiences growing up here in Benzie, do you think that it prepared you for the real life?
Some of it, yeah, anywhere I think would do that, to a
Sure.
point.
Sure. Once you got into the real world, was there anything that you learned, like, a lot more?
Well, about 16 days after graduation, I went into basic training, so I didn't experience much from high school to military life. And I'm not going to say the military is not the real world, but it's the part of the world that most people don't understand.
What did your parents do as you were growing up?
Say again?
What did your parents do, like, for jobs?
My dad actually drove bus for Benzie Central 19 years. He retired from that and drove Benzie bus for a while, and then did sub-busing for Benzie Central. My mom worked in an office for a while as a kid growing up, and she worked for Tower Automotive in Traverse City until they shut the doors on it, and then started becoming a foster parent. And she, medical issues, ended up being disabled and ended up adopting 7 children, and now I have them.
Did you have any siblings growing up?
I have one older brother, one younger brother, and a younger sister. All graduated from Benzie.
Awesome. So, when you enlisted, did you have any family members or other role models that encouraged you, or?
My grandfather, his name was Ralph Bentley. As a kid growing up, I used to listen to his stories about the 82nd Airborne, all the hoo-ah stuff that he used to do. Had an older cousin who was in the Marine Corps. So, decided to follow my grandfather's footsteps and go into the Army.
That's awesome. What did your friends and family think about you enlisting?
Well, backlog a little bit. My older brother went into the Army just before I did, about a year and a half. He was a Cobra mechanic, and I went into the infantry. For Benzie County, a lot of kids seemed in that day and age, a lot of young men go into the military because there's not, there wasn't a lot around here to do except for get in trouble. So my mom was all for it. My dad thought it was pretty cool that we did it. Until the Gulf War came about.
Sure. Right. Did you have, well, I guess not if you went in, no secondary education?
Not at that time, no.
Did you get it after?
Actually, have an associate's degree in welding, and I got my associate's degree about 4.5 years ago.
Awesome. Where did you attend when you went to?
Baker and Cadillac.
Awesome. So did you have any jobs during your high school career?
Yeah, a few. I worked as a janitor for the place my mom used to work at, cleaning up the offices and stuff, and helping the truck drivers clean up their trucks. That was Bear Lake SWD. They did salt brine to oil wells and stuff. Pruned pine trees as a kid growing up. Picked apples, fruit, whatever. worked out there packing fruit a couple of summers.
Sure. So, and you joined in 1989, is that
Yep.
correct? So, was it just your grandfather's influence that made you decide to join, or was there any other factors?
Probably my older brother, you know, talking with him and some of the stuff he was doing, and you see all the hype and hoop on TV about how, you know, travel, see other countries. They just don't let you know it's part of countries that most people won't pay to go see, but...
Yeah, definitely. So, was there anyone that you left behind when you left for your service, or just your family?
Just main family members.
Yeah, sure. Was there anyone that you especially missed?
Oh, I miss my mom, my sister, you know,
Sure.
brothers, but it ended up being that my older brother and I were stationed at the same place, the 101st Airborne Division. And we actually had a cousin that showed up there later on, so we had like a small family reunion
Right.
going on over there.
That's awesome. And so you were in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And so what made you kind of lean towards the Army than any other branch?
The Marine Corps I looked at, but I didn't like the fact of it's kind of a crapshoot to find out what you might actually be doing, because you list your name on, or list 4 or 5 MOSs, I think it's 5 MOSs of what you would like to do, and they'll give you the top one that they have openings in. Not much for seawater, so the Navy was completely out of that, and the Army, just the infantry looked appetizing to me.
Sure. So where and how did you enlist?
Recruiter came out to the high school, and they used to set up stations out there where, you know, they'd have a half dozen recruiters out there, Army recruiters, and they let us rappel out of the rafters of the building, and they had landed a couple of, I believe they were Blackhawks out in the parking lot, and you got to check out the stuff with that, and that's my senior year. The end of my junior year, started my senior year, I enlisted or signed up with the intent to go in, and then right after graduation, headed to MEPS for all the processing.
Sure. So, going into training a little bit, what training did you receive?
I did basic and AIT at Fort Benning. Actually went in with airborne and a RIP program, but I blew a knee out in jump school, and not everybody's always on the up and up with you with the way the classes were, so I ended up taking a medical drop and found out after the fact that taking a medical drop, you're not eligible to go to that school ever. Which worked out, because then I ended up at the 101st with my brother and my cousin, and we actually all deployed to Desert Storm, Desert Shield together. And
So what is the AIT training? What is that?
advanced individual training. It goes into more specific of what you are. So if you're in the infantry, teaching more like squad movements, reactive fire, moving in formations, digging foxholes, which they don't do anymore. But like my brother was a Cobra mechanic. My AIT was 6 weeks, I believe. His was, I think, 12 or 13, because he was fixing, replacing motors and rotors and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you go into, how long your advanced individual training is.
What was the easiest part of your training?
They do a turning blue ceremony after basic and AIT. So you finish your basic training and family members come down. Actually, I take that back. It's after your AIT, which for the infantry is called the turning blue ceremony. You get your infantryman cord and whatnot. And your family members are allowed to come down and visit you in between phases of what you got going on.
Right, sure. What was the hardest part of training?
I would have to say the worst part about it was getting over the initial blast of homesickness, because I had never been away from my family for more than a week or two at a time, and jumping from one state to another and being locked up basically like a caged animal for 13 weeks.
Right.
You know, things are a lot different now compared to then, but
Sure. Where did your training occur? You said it was out of
Fort
state.
Benning, Georgia.
Oh, right. Yep. So, do you have a particular like memory that sticks out from your training?
Uh, yeah, there we had one drill sergeant. His name was Drill Sergeant Frost. He didn't seem to be too mentally stable, but he was a heck of an instructor. Left a short way through. He ended up having to have tumors removed off his brain, and he came back for our turning blue ceremony and stuff, and had a lot of respect for him.
Sure. So, other than Sergeant Frost, was there any other instructors?
Yeah, there was another Drill Sergeant Pitts and Drill Sergeant Sonoma. Drill Sergeant Sonoma was from Hawaii, and he had a little bit of a speech impediment. So, but he sticks out in my head just the way he used to talk. You know, he couldn't say buff, like buff my floors. He'd say
Right.
puff. So it would, you know, and it would irritate him when people would laugh at it, and
Right.
you know, you'd have barracks PT going on for a while. So
So kind of going out of Benzie, was it kind of a culture shock to see all these different cultures?
it wasn't so much a culture shock. It's more so the way they describe it in the military is imagine taking every person off from 56 streets in the United States that thinks they're the baddest person off that street, and you jam them all in one room. So you had a lot of conflict of interest, personality conflicts, but that's part of, back then that was part of the training, to learn to even work with somebody that you don't care for. You know, you may not like each other, you may not go have a beer afterwards, but you have to work together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it puts a jam in the cog.
Was that hard for you to adjust to?
There was one individual that him and I just didn't see eye to eye from the word go. Never met the guy, never said anything to him. Neither I. We just didn't care for each other. But we learned to work together.
Right.
And that's part of the military. It doesn't matter, Army, Air Force, Marine, Navy, Coast Guard, whatever it is. You've got to learn to work together.
Yeah.
Mission
Definitely.
first.
So, other than your AIT, did you get any other specialized training?
Yeah, I went through air assault school when I got to the 101st, rappelling out of helicopters,
Okay, sure.
learning how to hook up sling loads to helicopters and stuff like that. It was very interesting training.
Yeah, yeah. So any other specialized equipment other than just like the helicopter slings and...
Over time, yes, not right off the get-go. I did active duty from 89 to 93, 93 to, I believe it was 98. Started out in the Tennessee National Guard, transferred to the Michigan National Guard, got out, had an 11-year separation in service, went back into the National Guard, the Michigan National Guard, and then did a 6-year hitch and got out in 2012. So I had close to 14 years altogether between. So in that time frame, you get certified combat lifesaver certified. You learn how to drive MRAPs, various different types of weapon systems. I had a lot of hearing damage, and was the first year that I was back in. I was supposed to deploy to Iraq, but they kicked me back, wouldn't let me stay in the infantry, so they reclassed me as a cook for the infantry. So I pretty much did everything they did, received the same training, just made their food for them on top of it.
Was there any equipment that you always wanted to use but never really could?
Well, that's like anything. Even as a little kid, you see things that you'd like to do, but you just don't have the skill set for it. I mean, you watch the helicopters go over, the Apaches, the Cobras. You know, that's the fun stuff. But I mean, as far as an infantryman, I mean, at one time I was 11 Bravo, which is an infantry, 11 Hotel, which is shooting a wire-guided missile off a Humvee, 11 Charlie, which is a mortarman. Ended up, my last MOS was a 92 Golf, which is food service professional, they call them.
Sure. So did you ever receive or want any promotions?
I made it up to the rank of E5, sergeant, buck sergeant, and with my wife and my children, when I got back from my Afghanistan trip, they just kind of had enough of it, and there was a lot going on, so I just decided to get out.
What kind of responsibilities did you have with that position?
I was a squad leader, and we had a cook section. Like over in Afghanistan, I had 3 other individuals under me. I was responsible for putting in the food orders for, what we were going to eat. We were up on a place called Isam Sahib, Camp Fortitude, and we were there for a few months before they shut it down, but we'd have to, check the food when it comes in, prep everything,
Sure.
cook for the guys, whatnot.
Definitely. So what was the hardest part to adjust to of the military lifestyle?
Um, there's a few. Most people have them. Just somebody barking out orders in your face or waking you up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do a barracks inspection. Like I said, things now compared to 1989 are way different.
Sure.
Way different. It's that in itself is almost a culture shock. That was part of me getting out. They want to run the Army so much like a business, and my personal opinion, that's why you have a lot of young people that are committing suicide that were in the military, because they don't receive the mental training. I'm not saying the old timers are exempt from it, because there are some of them that have had it happen. It's just more common with the younger generations. The military's gotten softer, like making somebody do push-ups or any type of PT is considered hazing now.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't use that as a form. They want you to write a counseling statement up on the individual, so that will follow them their entire career over something that could be taken care of over, in my time, a few push-ups, whatever, smoke it for about 10 or 15 minutes, be
Right.
done with it.
Yeah, definitely. Was there an easiest part to adapt to?
I will say my first go around in the Gulf War, that was probably one of the harder ones. Most of it being the not knowing if you're going to get shot or get blown up, or if it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. When I went to Afghanistan, it didn't so much bother me. I mean, it's one of those things. You can't control it. You're not going to stop it. Just as if you make a bad decision to pull out in front of somebody, you could get creamed.
Definitely, yeah. So now kind of getting into the wartime service. Going into the Gulf War, did you agree with the politics that was going on at the time?
I honestly didn't pay a whole lot attention to the politics. I was 19 years old. I didn't follow politics a lot back then. So to me it was, I guess the way I viewed it was, you had one bully kicking somebody else's butt, and we just went in to put them back in their own place.
Sure, yeah. And so you also showed in your data form that you served in multiple states in the United States as well as overseas. So
Yep.
what were you doing in those locations?
A lot of times you do 30-day field problems. So I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Sometimes we'd go to Alabama, Florida, Texas. I'd actually have to sit down and look at everything, but we bounced around quite a bit. You'd go out there, California, the National Training Center was another one. Taught you desert warfare out there.
Sure. Did you have a favorite location?
I'd have to say JORTC, which is Jungle Operations Training, which was in Panama.
Mm.
I had a pretty good time down there. I liked that area.
Yeah. And so you went to those locations before you went to the Middle East?
Some of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Most of them.
Sure, just for that training and stuff.
A lot of times they'll send you to specific training centers, especially now it's changed quite a bit. Like I've been to NTC twice now with the Afghanistan hitch. But they've got certain training centers set up for mobilization, especially for guardsmen. You go to a MOB site, you have to meet certain criterias. once you've passed all the medical and all the preset stuff that needs to be done, then they'll deploy your unit when they're ready.
Sure, right. So what was it like serving in the Middle Eastern countries?
That is a culture shock.
Sure.
Totally different way of life. My They don't value human life the way we do here. That's one of the big things to them. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe. I don't want to. How do I want to word this? I don't want to hit a specific religious group with it, because some of them follow different brothers of Muhammad and all that. I don't know. It's just way different than here. I mean, people over there get killed for mispronouncing the way one brother pronounced something to the other. You know, it's the difference between Christianity and Jehovah Witness. I mean, if you mispronounce or mislead somebody with something, they don't start shooting each other or killing each other over religion.
Yeah, definitely. So were you in combat or combat support or combat service support?
I was in combat.
Sure, yeah.
During Desert Storm, Desert Shield, the ground war only lasted, I believe it was 3 days. We went in shortly before and took EPWs, escaped prisoners of war. Took fire from them. We traded lead a few times.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we didn't lose anybody with those little conflicts. It wasn't as bad as like the Iraq War where that kicked up. I have actually quite a few buddies that were over there, and it was a rough time.
Yeah, definitely. So that another thing about Desert Storm is back in the States it was almost like publicized as like and it's sometimes referred to as the video game war, because that's when like the G.I. Joes started coming out. And do you think that influenced a lot of people's decision to enlist?
I wouldn't really so much say the video game war for Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Maybe the Iraq War, because that's when they really started using drones and things of that nature. But I mean, even with the technology we had back then, we walked a lot.
Yeah, right.
And you carried pretty much everything you lived with on your back.
Definitely.
So I was about 132 pounds and carried roughly 165 pounds on my back.
Wow.
So it takes its toll on you.
Definitely. And so how did your service, especially in the Middle East, change you? Like, what did you learn from that?
Well, taking life it's not as glorified as movies make it to be. When you're a young person, you don't think as much about it. As you get older, you think more about change, the way you would have done something different. But generally, younger people are a little more hasty, hot-headed. I know I was. Mm-hmm. Just some of the stuff that you see, and there's certain things that I'm not going to go into that I have seen. It is definitely a culture shock, a huge culture shock. And they forewarn you of that before you even leave country.
Sure. Like what kind of training for the culture did you get?
You try to learn some of their language, and now looking back, I know that like they say that the same part of the brain that controls your ability to do math is a good one for foreign languages and learning other languages, which I'm horrible at both. So you learn basic commands, things of that nature. But while we were there, we ended up with Terps, we called them, interpreters. In Desert Storm, Desert Shield, over in Afghanistan, they were called LAs, language assistants, and they were locals that were willing to work with the United States soldiers to break the language barrier, so to speak.
Sure. Did you make any longtime friends during your service?
You mean from over there, or the
Yeah.
service members?
Both.
Well, I had, I was, when I went to the Gulf War, I was a M60 AG. My gunner's name was Aaron Walker. He passed away here a few years ago, about 42. Still don't know why. He had developed some medical issues. But yeah, him and I stayed in touch for the longest time. I'd go to Texas and see him, and actually took my wife and my daughters down there to introduce them. And I lost contact with him for a while because of him moving around, me moving around. But the internet's kind of a wonderful thing. You can, instead of having to make phone calls and trying to look up names and numbers, you can just punch it all in now.
Definitely. Kind of on that note, how did you communicate with your family during your service?
Pencil and paper and envelope.
Yeah.
You'd take about 10 weeks to get a reply.
Yeah.
By the time you mailed it out and you got it back, and usually in that time you found a phone somewhere, they had a satellite rigs over there, they call them rat rigs. And when you spoke to somebody on it, you had to wait about 3 seconds to get their response because of the delay of bounce off the satellites.
Wow. So what did you do during your downtime? Kind of any recreation?
During the Gulf War, we played cards. That was pretty much the big thing. Go out, play catch with a chem light or a ball or whatever we could turn into a game. That was probably the worst part. If you sat and let yourself get stagnant and just sit and think about stuff and not do anything to break the monotony, it have a tendency to break people down.
And so there's a lot of camaraderie when you're in the service with everyone that's around you. Did you personally feel that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Even my last hitch with people that are half my age, you build a camaraderie with just about anybody that you're in close work with.
Sure, definitely. Do you remember any particularly humorous or unusual events that occurred?
Well, I will tell you, with the military, you got to be careful with those type of questions because things that military people find humorous, some people do not.
Definitely.
I got my battle buddy Aaron picked on me quite a bit. He was a Texan, and we had one time somebody dropped a helmet off a building and it struck me in the forehead. So I had this like massive goose egg on my forehead, and I couldn't wear my helmet right, so I had to wear it all cocked back. He used to rag on me about it all the time. But I mean, you find things to entertain yourself. You know, stupid people things do, and you sit there and poke at them. Like we used to do our own haircuts, and it was with like hedge clipper type deals. They didn't have the electric ones that we could use, so they were doing that and used to do designs on the back of people's heads and tell them their hair's done and let them go off.
Oh, definitely. Was there anything that you did for good luck or have any superstitions about anything?
No.
So, what was the best part or your most favorite memory of your service?
I would probably have to say when I met my family when I came back from the Gulf War. Sure. That was probably the most relieving, probably the most emotional.
Definitely. Kind of going into that, to the end of your service, do you remember the day that your service ended?
Yep.
What were you doing? What was happening?
They actually wanted me to re-enlist, and I had an issue with trying to get through WLC, Warrior Leadership Training, which you needed to go from 5 to 6. And Michigan National Guard, I mean, they're a bunch of good guys, but they still run on the good old boy system, which means it's who you know, you get the schools.
Sure.
So I needed that to go from 5 to 6, and they couldn't guarantee me a slot for it, so I just turn my stuff in, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of it, you have to progress.
Did you want to re-enlist?
I had thought about it because I only needed 6 years to retire.
Wow.
To hit my 20 years. hindsight 2020, if I'd have stayed in and not taken my 11-year separation, I would have been done by the time I was 40.
Right. What was your ending rank? Was it that sergeant
E5.
rank? Yeah.
Yep, I got that in 2011, 2010.
Sure. So, and you moved back home when you were done?
I was actually, my last hitch, I was in the National Guard, so I'd drive from Benzonia clear to Bay City
Oh, sure.
once a month. And then our summer drills, but
And so, how were you received when you came home? Like
my family, they were pretty ecstatic. Actually, I did is my wife and my mom knew I was coming home. And they picked me up at the Traverse City Airport. And my daughters were at home chilling, watching TV, and I snuck in the back door while I forgot my wife had gotten a dog while I was gone. It's a little ankle biter. And he'd never seen me before, so he's flipping out when I snuck through the back door. And they come to the kitchen to see what the dog was barking about and the waterworks.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. Let me just change the battery real quick. All right. So, what was it like to return back to civilian life?
A little bit of a transition. During the Gulf War, it wasn't so bad because I didn't have children. I actually had a wife when I went over, got rid of her when I got back. Afghanistan, it was a bit of a transition because I had 2 teenage daughters when I left, young teenage daughters. Came back, they're a year older. I'm still thinking that, okay, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. And it's like, oh, wait.
Right.
We're a little bit older, we're allowed to do. So you just you're kind of there, and just the problem with transitioning, some people don't deal with it well. And with the mindset of you were gone for a year, you're out of the picture, so they grow a little taller, a little older, and you still think that people are the way they were when they left. And you yourself aren't the same person when you left.
Definitely. And so, and you did go back to school, right, after your service to get your associates?
Yep, I was working at Eagle Pitcher in Traverse City. Got permanently laid off in 2010, and because some of the work was done overseas, there was a TAA, TRA program that would pay for you to be re-educated to go into a different line of the workforce. I was supposed to deploy. Our deployment to Afghanistan kept getting pushed back, so I couldn't start classes because every time I'd go to start, they'd already started, then they'd push the deployment date back. So I ended up having to do a quarter, ended up in Afghanistan, came back, finished up my associate's degree for welding. I originally went into, was going to try and do network repair, but around here there's not a lot of use for it. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll get a degree in welding. Was almost done with my degree, did my internship for Jillison's Variety Fabrication. Had 1 quarter of school left, and they offered me a job. Started October 1st and was there for about 4 years, a little over 4 years. But now I'm kind of a stay-at-home, take care of my younger brother's thing, because there's, my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. My wife and I had told her if something ever happened to her that we would take care of them, and trying to work a full-time job and deal with teenagers from 17 down to 9 is just too much.
Definitely.
I've been pushing stuff with VA. I actually am now. I have 70% disability for hearing and, shoulder, knees, hips, back, whatever they listed it as. But as you get older, all the stuff you did when you were younger will come back to haunt you.
Definitely. Was the Army able to pay for your associate's degree, or did you have to pay for that?
Actually, the Michigan Works TAATRA program paid for my degree. I actually still have some schooling if I wanted to go back for that I could use from the military.
Oh, that's awesome. So kind of to wrap it all up, how did the service change you?
Well, I could say that I grew up a little bit, but that would depend on who you talk to. Most people say I still act like I did when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. Um, Gives you a newfound look on life, looking at things different, not, you know, it's kind of like that old proverb, I guess they'd call it. You throw a pebble into a pond, it ripples for a while and then calms down, but the pond is forever changed. You know, it does change you. I mean, can't say for the good, can't say for the worst, because everything you do in your life, good or bad, makes you who you are currently. So,
Yeah.
maybe understand different cultures, way of looking at things a little more objectively, not listening to politicians.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, James. We appreciate it so much.
You're
And,
welcome.
Thank you so much again.